FOMO driving auction results. Let's have a look. Good morning, everyone. Florian Heiser here, and welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. I have my morning stein of coffee, and I thought we'd start the day by looking at an article discussing auction results and how. How? Because of a shortage in auction stock available. Demand is skyrocketing. More and more bidders are competing for the properties they can. You better get in now. You better experience that FOMO and jump on board right now. Before we look at this, I'll jump over to my website where I actually wrote an article exposing the truth of the fake auction clearance rates exposed. And thanks to some data provided by Fresh Canvas, data mining, the auction clearance data pretty much gives evidence to show that that our auction clearance rates are always going to have a bias towards higher figures than reality shows, because real estate agents don't want to say when they've failed, and they don't tend to report it back, so it's not an accurate representation of what's happening in the market. Though it's reported like the gospel, every newspaper, every article talks about auction clearance rates. But I think it's two things, that the whole economy is just based on auction clearance rates and web search results. At least that's the feeling I get when we're reading these bloody news articles on property. It'll all be good, the economy will be fine because people are searching on their bloody iPhones looking at property. Am I the only one that thinks that's utterly ludicrous? Talking about something is very different to coughing up the coin. If you've been in business, the deal ain't signed until the deal's signed. And the money isn't paid until the money's paid. Even a signed piece of paper is only worth as much as you want to spend on lawyers enforcing that signed piece of paper. That's the reality of it, everyone. So have a look at this article. You can download the Excel files and see for yourself. See for yourself what is going on and why it isn't accurate. And they have all of the information. So let's jump back and look at this piece about auctions, speeding up, heating up, I should say, not speeding up. I need to learn my jingo, don't I? Lingo. Can tell I barely had my first coffee. And, see if this will encourage people to dive in, to take that step. I mean, this is the thing. With the media, with the market, everything, a big part of it is just emotions. And getting control of your emotions and not letting them get away from you so you don't make rash, emotionally based decisions is a challenge. For all of us. And particularly, I was reading about FOMO, about getting into the market. And I was seeing that go shooting up, climbing up, thinking, maybe I should put a bit more in there. Or, not a bit more in there. Maybe I should flip some of that super I put into cash over into it. You know what, I'm going to wait. I think the ASX 200 will eventually crumble because we've seen no fundamental economic data. And it just shows, you need to fight the FOMO. And I think it's because of all of the information that's put out towards us, all of the news we consume and what we see in the media. And that hasn't changed, that's historical. But a lot of I was reading books on trading and investors, and they say, particularly people who day trade, it's no problem if you miss out on an opportunity. Another one will come later. And the older you get, the more you start to realize that's true. That's true. Like, nothing's worse than the first time you break your heart. You get a bit older, you kind of laugh thinking back upon how distraught you felt. So let's look at this article. Nearly 500 New South Wales properties went under the hammer this weekend, with preliminary results revealing most sellers scored prices over their reserve due to heated buyer competition. Wow, so if you're a seller, maybe now's the time to jump on board. Maybe it actually is now's the time to get on before property takes a hit, unless they throw the kitchen sink at it. Home seekers are coming up against growing competition at Sydney's auction as buyers flood back into the market to vie for a depleted supply of properties. Nearly 500 New South Wales properties went under the hammer on Saturday, with realestate.com.au reporting a preliminary clearance rate of 74% based on 232 results. Now here you go. They've received less than 50% of the results. And this is the issue. And they're treating the results that they haven't received as having the same ratio as the ones they have. And real estate agents are going to report real quick if it was a success. And they might may not even report if it was a failure. And that's what the Fresh Canvas data shows here. And they won't go back and update it when the same property is listed for sale. Because with a database, you always have something that you can track your data with. With property, it's the address that doesn't change. The volume of auctions was a modest increase from last week, when about 60% of auctions were a success for the vendors. Ray White, New South Wales chief auctioneer Alex Pataro, said larger than average crowds were rolling back in its Sydney auctions, with the sales network reporting an average of 6 bidders. Is that 6? Is 6 bidders impressive, guys? I'm in Queensland. You know, the idea of going to an auction for a house seems insane to me. I mean, there you go, 1.86 million. Hey, with money printing, it might be billion one day, guys. We could all be billionaires. You know, and that's sadly not a joke. The number of bidders across Sydney remained ultra competitive, and we're recording on average 6 registered per lot with 3 active, he said. A renovated 4-bedroom house in Guyma Bay sold for $810,000, above the price the vendors paid in 2013. Oh, okay. I thought this was going to be another case of $800,000 above reserve, and you got a first homeowner couple going, "Oh, property always goes up." The 696 square meter property on Yarraburra Street sold under the hammer for $1.86 million, $90,000 over reserve. It had last traded for $1.05 million 7 years ago. So let's bring up this chart here showing property prices. So 7 years ago in Sydney. So we can see there just, 2011, and you can't see where I'm pointing my mouse, but you can have a look there where Sydney is the light blue. So at Sydney was the lowest one on this chart, or 12 years ago. I can't do maths. Sydney was the lowest one on this chart, everyone. And look at that. We don't have a housing problem in Australia. 6 bidders vied for the 3-level home, which was listed with Alex Pittis of Greg Gilbert Real Estate. It includes a swimming pool. I mean, there you go. There's a nice... And Redfern. I thought it wasn't Redfern like a dodgy suburb in Sydney. Maybe I'm just out of date. Maybe I'm really out of date. Thinking back to the 80s. Mr. Petizzi said buyers were beginning to adjust to the changed environment brought on by the pandemic. It feels like we've gone through something similar to the 7 stages of grief. There was shock in the beginning. Now we're close to acceptance. Buyers are just getting on with it, he said. We've only just had the beginnings of our first recession in nearly 30 years. I guess if people are in good employment, or they have enough savings, or they have cash, or they can easily service a mortgage, that's fine. Maybe go for it. Am I being too paranoid? Thinking about waiting? What would you think? What would you think? This was translated into a renewed urgency for some buyers, particularly upsizers, he said. Upsizers. So that's the wife or the missus putting pressure to upgrade the family home. In St. George Enclave Cars Park, 9 bidders competed for a 3-bedroom house on Mirrabooka Avenue, including a pool. I mean, there you go. I mean, it's nice. Nice little place. $1.4 million for a rendered brickie. Guys, $1.4 million. Auctioneer Andrew Cooley of Cooley Auctions dropped the hammer on the property at 1.4. Selling agent Rob Sieb of Paramount Real Estate said there was strong interest during the campaign and more than 70 groups inspected the property. The interest encouraged the sellers to raise the price guide from 1.3 to 1.35. Mr. Sieb said houses on larger blocks were the most hotly contested properties in Sydney South because they attracted upsizers and families with plans for a knockdown rebuild project. The properties are getting a good response from buyers, he said. Well, if you've got the money and can handle a potential hit to your property, or if it's a forever home, and you just plan to, you've got a big enough family, Go for it. In South Hurstville, a double-story house on George Street sold for $1.54. Closer to the inner city, a garden apartment in Alexandria changed hands for $215 over reserve and peaked interest from 16 registered bidders. The two-bedroom home on Wyndham Street, described as an urban oasis, sold under the hammer for $1.1 million. 7 of the registered bidders submitted offers, with auctioneer James Keenan receiving an opening bid at the $900,000 reserve. So there's demand. The apartment in a converted warehouse came with a rare landscape garden, which selling agent Arika Ezan of Ray White Erkinsville said helped attract buyers. The Alexander sale was fresh on the heels of the auction of a 3-bedroom townhouse at Madison Street in Redfern, also hosted by Mr. Erson's sales team. The townhouse sold for $1.15, pipping the reserve price of $151,000. Mr. Erson said properties in the area that were priced between $700,000 and $2 million were the most hotly contested because they attracted upsizers. So we're not really looking at first home buyers here. Above $700,000. Generally, that's not a first home buyer. Demand in the first home buyer market below $700,000 is getting a bit soft, he said. There is a lot of choice, so the buyers are picky at the moment. Well, there you go. So for the majority of people who are trying to get into the market, this article is not relevant at all. It's the complete opposite. Properties priced over $2 million tend to linger on the market, he added. In Surrey Hills, a 5-bedroom terrace on Richard Ave passed in on a vendor bid of $2.85 million. So there you see. This is indeed an article looking at just a slight bracket, a cherry-picked part of the property sector, where people who are probably well-financed, ready to upgrade, move into a bigger property, are taking the leap, are taking the plunge. Maybe it's something they've been planning to do for some time. And they're taking advantage of our insanely low cash rate, and maybe they're confident that we'll get a V-shaped recovery and there won't be any correction to property. And yet we're seeing bankers selling out of Sydney, and the RBA and the Commonwealth Bank predicting a 30% decline in property prices. What do you think, everyone? And what do you think about, well, the auction clearance rates? As always, thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. If you're a fan and want to help support the channel, there are a few ways you can. Simply commenting, interacting with the content is a great way to show the YouTube algorithm that it's popular. It'll spread it around, and more people will see the channel. It'll help us grow. You can support us financially via joining us on YouTube or Patreon, or you can use our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and KuCoin. You can buy our merch from Heiser Says. You can support us using Gold Pass from the Perth Mint or PayPal. Thanks, everyone. I will see you in the next video.